My name is Graham Ellis. I was 36, senior project lead at a commercial planning firm in Portland, and for the previous 2 years, Sloan had been the person I most respected and least wanted to admit I respected. She was sharp in a way that made rooms uncomfortable. Not loud, not dramatic. Worse, precise. Sloan could sit through 20 minutes of a partner talking himself into a bad decision, tilt her head, and say, "That sounds expensive and emotionally convenient," and suddenly everyone would realize the plan was garbage. She had dark hair, usually pinned back too tightly, a closet full of clean lines and neutral colors, and the unsettling ability to make eye contact feel like a performance review. I didn't dislike her. That was the lie I told because the truth was less useful. The truth was, she made me better. I hated sloppy reasoning more when she was in the room. I edited my proposals twice if I knew she would see them. I could feel where an argument was weak before she even opened her mouth because some part of me had learned to hear her voice in my head. Infuriating, effective, probably unhealthy. That morning, the partners had announced she would lead Northbridge, the largest urban redevelopment project we had seen in years. I had built the first version of that pitch. I had worked 3 weekends on the site analysis. I had rewritten the community access plan after Sloan tore the first one apart with one sentence. "You're designing for approval, not for people who actually live there." She had been right. I had fixed it. And then the partners gave the account to her. I smiled in the meeting. I congratulated her afterward. She looked at me strangely when I did. "You're taking this well," she said. "I'm a professional." "No," she said. "You're quiet. Those are different." I walked away before she could read anything else. By 6, I had written a resignation draft. By 7, I had printed it. By 8, I had folded it into my notebook without sending it because apparently even quitting required me to overthink formatting. By 10, I realized I had left the notebook on my desk, so I drove back. The office after hours always felt like a stage after the audience left. Computers sleeping, conference rooms dark, chairs pushed in badly by people who believed adulthood ended at their own laptops. The city lights pressed against the windows and the whole floor smelled faintly of burnt coffee and printer toner. Then I saw my desk lamp on, and Sloan sitting there, in my chair. My first thought was that I was too tired and had hallucinated the worst possible person. My second thought was that she had found the resignation draft. She looked up before I said anything. No smirk, no victory, no polished office face. She looked tired, almost nervous, though I would have denied that under oath if anyone asked me 2 hours earlier. "What are you doing at my desk?" I asked. She glanced at the paper, then back at me. "Let's talk in private." I looked around the empty floor. "Sloan, it's 10 at night. Unless the copy machine has developed opinions, we're private." "No." She stood, picking up my resignation draft carefully. "We're in the office. That's different." I should have been angry. I was, technically. But the sight of her holding that paper did something strange to the anger, made it colder, cleaner. "You read it?" "It was in the printer tray." "No, it wasn't." Her jaw tightened. "It was when I found it." That stopped me. "I printed it hours ago." "I know." She lowered her voice. "Graham, someone else saw it before I did." The floor seemed to shift under me. "Who?" She didn't answer there. Instead, she walked past me toward the small archive room near the back of the office, the one nobody used except to store old zoning binders and dead plants the admin team felt guilty throwing away. I followed because I wanted the paper back. That was what I told myself. Inside the archive room, Sloan shut the door. It clicked softly. Too softly. The room was narrow, lit by one overhead bulb and the orange spill of city light through a small interior window. Shelves lined 3 walls. The air smelled like cardboard, dust, and old carpet. Sloan handed me the resignation draft. I took it. Her fingers brushed mine, barely. Still, both of us noticed. She folded her arms immediately after, like she was angry at her own hand. Good. At least one of us had discipline. "Start talking," I said. She looked at me for a long second, and then she said, "Darren found it." Darren Vale was our managing partner. Expensive haircut, empty encouragement, The kind of man who said, "We're a family here," right before denying someone a raise. My stomach tightened. He read it? Yes. And gave it to you? No. Her eyes sharpened. He left it on the conference table with my name on a folder. I stared at her. That doesn't make sense. It does if he wanted me to know you were leaving before you told anyone. Why? Sloane looked down once, then back at me. Because he thinks I'll take Northbridge. Take your research, take your team, and be grateful enough not to ask questions. I let out a short laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was exactly the kind of thing Darren would call strategy. And will you? Her face changed. That was the wrong question. I knew it the second it left my mouth. Sloane stepped closer, not enough to touch me, but enough to make the little room feel smaller. If I wanted to take your work and smile about it, I wouldn't be standing in a storage room at 10:30 trying to talk you out of disappearing. I had no answer ready. That was rare with her. She continued, quieter now. You think I came here to gloat? Didn't you? No. Then why were you sitting at my desk? Her mouth tightened, and for the first time all night, she looked away. When she spoke, her voice was lower. Because I wanted to understand how angry you must have been to leave without a fight. That hit harder than I expected. I looked at the resignation draft in my hand. It suddenly felt less like a decision and more like evidence. You got the account, I said. I got assigned the account. Her eyes came back to mine. That is not the same thing. Sloane, no, listen to me for once without preparing your rebuttal. She took a breath. Northbridge was not better because of me. It was better because you listened when I challenged you. Because you took a criticism that would have made most men defensive and turned it into the strongest part of the pitch. I stared at her. Her voice softened, but her posture stayed rigid, like honesty required structure or it might spill everywhere. And I am so tired of watching rooms reward people for using you while calling you too steady to lead. For a few seconds, I could hear nothing except the buzz of the overhead light. I had spent all day telling myself I was angry because I lost. That wasn't it. Not really. I was angry because a part of me had believed them. Too steady. Too quiet. Useful in the background. Good at fixing the hard parts before someone louder presented them. Sloane saw it. Of course she did. That was the dangerous thing about her. She always saw the part I was trying to keep off the slide. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded page. This is why I said private. I looked at it. What is that? A revised leadership memo Darren sent to the partners after seeing your resignation draft. She handed it to me. I opened it. The first line was enough. If Graham exits voluntarily, we can position Sloane as sole architect of the Northbridge strategy without internal disruption. Sole architect. I read it twice. Sloane stood in front of me, quiet and pale in the bad archive room light. I didn't come to take your place, she said. I came because they were about to erase you from your own work. The paper trembled slightly in my hand. Not much. Enough for her to notice. She always noticed. And then, very softly, she said the sentence that made the night stop being about a resignation. Graham, if you walk away now, they win. And I lose the only person in this building who ever made me better. I read the memo again. Not because I expected the words to change, because some part of me needed one more second before accepting that my bad day had not been bad luck. It had been useful to someone. Sloane watched me in silence from the other side of the archive room, arms folded tight, jaw set like she was holding back 3 different versions of anger, and none of them were polite enough for office policy. Sole architect? I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. Sloane's eyes flicked to the paper. That phrase made me want to break something expensive. You? I contain multitudes. I almost laughed. Almost. But the memo sat in my hand like proof that the firm had looked at 18 months of my work and found a clean way to turn it into someone else's ladder. And worse, they had chosen Sloane. Not because she had stolen anything, because they assumed she would accept the theft if it came with the right title. They thought you'd go along with this, I said. Her face hardened. Yes. Why wouldn't they? That one landed badly. I didn't mean it as an accusation, not exactly, but Sloane heard what I wasn't saying. She stepped closer, eyes sharp. Because I'm ambitious? Because you won. I didn't win like that, but you still won. The silence after that was ugly. For the first time all night, she looked hurt. Not offended. Hurt. That was worse. Then she said, "If that's what you think of me, why are we still talking?" I looked down at the memo, then at the resignation draft in my other hand. Because I didn't think that, not really. I thought a lot of things about Sloane Archer. Difficult things, annoying things. Things I had never let become language because language had a way of becoming responsibility. But I had never thought she was cheap. I exhaled slowly. I'm angry. I noticed. And I'm aiming badly. Yes. I'm sorry. She blinked once. Apparently, she had prepared for a fight and did not know what to do with an apology. Good. Let her suffer a little. You should be, she said, but the edge had softened. I folded Darren's memo and set it on a stack of old zoning binders. Why bring this to me? You could take the account, make the partners happy, and let me quit quietly. Is that a real question? Yes. No, it isn't. Sloane. She looked away, frustrated now. Because I don't want the account without you. The words hit the small room too hard. She seemed to realize it at the same time I did. Her chin lifted, defensive reflex returning. Professionally. Of course. I mean it. I didn't say you didn't. Her eyes narrowed. You're doing that thing. What thing? Sounding reasonable while being impossible. That's my brand. No. She took a breath. Your brand is letting people underestimate how much of the room you're holding together, then acting like it doesn't bother you when they hand someone else the credit. I had no clean response to that. She continued, quieter. Do you know what I thought the first time you argued back at me? That I was ruining your afternoon? That you were the first man in that firm who didn't confuse disagreement with disrespect. That stopped me. The archive room felt suddenly too small for all the things I had not known. Sloane's eyes stayed on mine, and for once, she didn't look like she was trying to win the sentence. She looked like she needed me to understand it. You listened, she said. You pushed back. You made the work better without making the room about your ego. Do you know how rare that is? I laughed once, but it came out rough. Apparently not rare enough to lead Northbridge. Her expression tightened. That is exactly why I came. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed. She checked it. Her mouth went flat. What? She turned the screen toward me, a message from Darren. Need to know where you stand before tomorrow's partner call. Graham's departure can be positioned cleanly if we move fast. This is an opportunity, there it was. Not subtle, not even smart. Just confident in the way people get when they have never been punished for assuming decency is negotiable. Sloane looked at me. I haven't answered. What were you going to say? I wanted to talk to you first. That's not an answer. No, she said. It's the truth before the answer. Something shifted in me then. Maybe because I had spent the entire day feeling erased. And here she was, in a storage room after hours, refusing to write over me, even when it would have benefited her. Maybe because she had read the worst paper I had ever printed and decided not to use it against me. Maybe because her anger on my behalf looked nothing like pity. I looked at the resignation draft again. Then I tore it in half. Sloane went still. I tore it again. Then dropped the pieces into the recycling bin beside a dead office fern. Her mouth parted slightly. You're staying? She asked. For now. That is not the most inspiring phrasing. I'm pacing myself. A small smile touched her face and vanished before it became dangerous. I pointed at her phone. Tell Darren we'll both be on the partner call tomorrow. We? Yes. And what are we saying? I picked up the memo. That Northbridge has 2 architects, and if they want to pretend otherwise, they can explain why the project files, research logs, revision history, and client notes say something different. Sloane stared at me. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not polite, not soft, a little lethal. There he is, she said. I should not have liked hearing that as much as I did. She typed back. Graham and I will both attend tomorrow's partner call. Leadership structure needs correction. Do not position his work without him. She hit send before I could overthink it for both of us. My phone buzzed 3 seconds later. Darren, heard you're still in the office. Let's not make emotional decisions tonight. I showed Sloane. She read it and laughed under her breath. Emotional, she said. That's rich. I'm learning that men in power call anything emotional when it stops helping them. Her eyes lifted to mine. For half a second, there was no Northbridge, no resignation, no Darren, no fluorescent archive room light. Just Sloane looking at me like I had finally said something she had been waiting 2 years to hear. Then the building lights clicked off in the hallway. After-hours motion sensors. The archive room stayed dim, lit only by the small interior window and the glow from her phone. Neither of us moved. The darkness should have made the moment easier to dismiss. It did not. Sloane's voice dropped. We should go. Yes. We didn't. She was close enough now that if I reached out, my hand would find her sleeve. I didn't. But I thought about it. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Graham, she said quietly, don't. I didn't say anything. You were about to. She held my gaze. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Her smile was faint, unsteady. Then maybe you noticed things too. That was when the archive room door handle moved. Both of us turned. Someone was outside. The handle moved again. Then Darren's voice came through the door, calm and polished. Sloane, Graham, are you two in there? Sloane looked at me. I looked at her. And the night, which had already been dangerous, suddenly became something else entirely. For 1 second, neither of us answered. That was a mistake. Silence is innocent when you are alone. Behind a closed archive room door after hours with your work rival, it sounds guilty, even when the only thing you have touched is a leadership memo and the edge of a very bad decision. Darren tried the handle again. Sloane? She looked at me, and the softness from her face vanished. Professional Sloane returned so fast it was almost impressive. Then she opened the door. Darren stood outside in a navy coat, phone in hand, looking exactly like a man who had expected to catch something useful and was disappointed to find us fully clothed and holding paperwork. His eyes moved from Sloane to me, then to the torn pieces of my resignation draft in the recycling bin. Well, he said, this seems intense. Sloane stepped out first. It is. Darren smiled. That wasn't an invitation. No, she said. It was a warning. I almost smiled. Bad timing. Darren's gaze shifted to me. Graham, I was hoping we could avoid this becoming theatrical. You left my resignation draft where someone else could find it. I found a document in a shared printer area. I printed it at my desk. His smile didn't move. Office. Equipment can be unpredictable. Sloane lifted Darren's memo between 2 fingers. Less unpredictable than this. That changed his face. Not much. Enough. He looked at the page and then at her. That was internal planning. That was erasure, she said. Sloane. No. Her voice stayed calm, but there was no warmth in it. You used his possible resignation as an opportunity to rewrite ownership of the Northbridge strategy before he had even made a decision. Darren glanced down the empty hallway as if reputation might be hiding behind the copy room. Lower your voice. Sloane did not. Why? His jaw tightened. I stepped beside her then. Not in front of her. Beside. That mattered. Darren noticed. Of course he did. His expression shifted into something colder. This is exactly why I wanted to speak separately. You two are clearly emotional. There it is, I said. He looked at me. Excuse me? Emotional, the word people use when the facts stop being convenient. Sloane's eyes flicked toward me. Not approval exactly. Something better. Recognition. Darren exhaled through his nose. Graham, you lost the lead on a major account. I understand that's difficult. But turning it into a conspiracy because Sloane had the stronger executive presence is not... She didn't ask for sole credit, I said. Darren's eyes sharpened. You don't know what she asked for. Sloane went very still. So did I. The hallway seemed to shrink around that sentence. Sloane's voice dropped. Say that again. Darren realized too late he had stepped somewhere unstable. He looked at his phone. It's late. We'll discuss this tomorrow. No, she said. We'll discuss it now. But Darren was already walking away. Partner called at 8, he said over his shoulder. Come prepared to be constructive. The elevator doors opened at the end of the hall. He stepped in. Gone. For a few seconds, Sloane and I stood in the dim corridor. Then she laughed once. Not because it was funny, because Fury needed somewhere to go. He's going to say I asked for it, she said. I know. He's going to imply I wanted Northbridge without you. I know. Her face turned toward me, and for the first time all night, I saw real fear under the anger. Not fear of Darren. Fear that I might believe him. That hit me harder than I expected. Sloane, I said quietly. If I believed that, I'd already be gone. She held my gaze. The building lights clicked back on around us, harsh and white, killing whatever intimacy the darkness had briefly allowed. But not all of it. Some things stayed. We went back to my desk and started pulling receipts, not financial ones, work receipts, revision history, shared drive timestamps, comments on the Northbridge deck, emails where I had sent field notes, Sloane's markups, my revised community access section, her reply saying, now it has a spine. At midnight, the office was silent except for my keyboard and Sloane pacing behind me. You pace when you're angry, I said. I pace when people are stupid. Then you must get your steps in. She stopped behind my chair. Too close. I felt her before I saw her reflection in the black monitor edge. She leaned over my shoulder to point at an email. This one, she said. This proves the housing access framework came from you. Her hair brushed my sleeve. Barely. But the whole office had become a room full of bare lies. Barely touching. Barely breathing differently. Barely pretending this was only about Northbridge. I opened the email. She stayed leaned close for half a second too long, then straightened like she had remembered herself. I didn't turn around. If I had, I might have said something stupid. Or honest. Hard to tell the difference at that hour. At 1:15, we found the real second knife, a permissions log. Darren had requested admin access to the Northbridge folder at 5:40 that afternoon. At 6:03, he had duplicated the working files into a new folder. The folder name, Northbridge_Archer_final. My name was nowhere in it. Sloane stared at the screen. Her face went pale with anger. He didn't wait for you to quit, she said. No. He was already moving your work. I looked at the folder, then at the torn resignation draft in the recycling bin. For the first time all night, I felt something solid under the anger. Purpose. Sloane sat on the edge of my desk, arms crossed, looking at the screen like she wanted to put Darren through it. I saved screenshots, exported the access log, forwarded a full packet to my personal email and to Sloane. Then I opened a new document. What are you doing? She asked. Writing tomorrow's agenda. At 1 in the morning? Yes. She leaned toward the screen. That first line is too polite. It says, clarification of Northbridge authorship and leadership structure. Exactly. Too polite. What would you write? She took the keyboard from me. Her shoulder pressed against mine as she typed. Correction of attempted misattribution of Northbridge strategy. I looked at her. She looked back. Accurate, she said. Terrifying. Also accurate, I smiled. This time she did too, a real one. Small, exhausted, dangerous. Then her phone buzzed again. Darren, she read the message. The smile disappeared. What? She turned the phone toward me. Partner call moved to 7 o'clock. Graham not required unless still employed by then. I'll handle the narrative. For a moment, I only heard the office air system humming above us. Then Sloane stood. Slowly. Oh, she said. I had heard that tone in meetings before. It meant someone was about to bleed professionally. She grabbed her coat. Where are you going? I asked. To wake up the one partner Darren can't bully before breakfast. Now? She looked at me. You said if you walk away, they win. Her voice softened just enough to change the room again. So don't walk away before 7. I stood too. I'm coming with you. Her eyes moved over my face. For 1 second, the fight ahead of us disappeared, and all that was left was the fact that neither of us had chosen to be alone in it. Then Sloane nodded. Good, she said. I was hoping you would. We did not go to Darren. That was the first smart decision Sloane made after 1 in the morning. We went to Marin Holt. Marin was one of the founding partners, mostly retired from daily chaos, but still present enough that every senior person in the firm lowered their voice when she entered a room. She was 72, silver-haired, terrifyingly calm, and had built half her career by making powerful men explain their vague decisions in complete sentences. Sloane called her from the parking garage. At first I thought nobody would answer at that hour. Then Sloane straightened. Marin, I'm sorry to call this late. A pause. No, not personal. Another pause. Her eyes flicked to me. It's Northbridge. And Darren. 10 minutes later, we were driving across the city in Sloane's car, rain sliding over the windshield. My laptop bag wedged between my feet, the evidence packet open on her center console like contraband. Neither of us spoke for the first few blocks, then she said, You can still back out. I turned toward her. That would be a strange choice after getting in your car at 1:30 in the morning. I mean it. So do I. She kept her eyes on the road. If this gets ugly, Darren will try to make you look bitter. He already started. And me ambitious. You are ambitious. Her mouth tightened. I added, That's not an insult. Her eyes moved to me briefly. You say that like you mean it. I do. She looked back at the road, but something in her face changed. Softened. Only for a second. Marin lives alone? I asked. Yes. You've been to her house? Once, after my first major pitch. I thought I'd ruined it. She invited me over, made tea, and told me I had excellent instincts and terrible self-preservation. Accurate. I was 29. Still accurate. That got a small laugh out of her. Good. The night needed one. Marin lived in a brick townhouse with black shutters and porch lights that made the rain look like falling glass. She opened the door wearing a robe over pajamas, reading glasses on a chain, and the expression of a woman who had already decided she was annoyed but not surprised. Come in, she said. No greeting, no small talk. Inside, her kitchen smelled like mint tea and old wood. Sloane laid out the evidence on the table. The memo, the access logs, the duplicated folder, the message about me not being required on the partner call. Marin read everything once, then again. She took her time. That was worse than anger. Finally, she looked at me. Were you resigning? I wrote a draft. Why? I could have said pride, exhaustion, a bad day. Instead, I told the truth. Because I thought the firm had already decided I was useful, but not worth naming. Marin's eyes stayed on mine. Then she looked at Sloane. And you? Sloane sat very still. I was given the lead on an account I did not build alone. Darren expected me to accept sole credit. Would you have? No. Why? Sloane's jaw tightened. For once, she looked less sure of how to make a sentence safe. Then she said, Because Graham's work made mine stronger. And because taking credit for what he built would make me the kind of strategist I've spent my career trying not to become. Marin leaned back. Her gaze moved between us, not suspiciously, worse, accurately. Is there anything personal between you two that compromises this? The room went quiet. Sloane looked down at the table. I felt my pulse in my throat. There were easy lies, technically defensible ones, but the whole night had started because people with authority had bent truth into convenience. I was done helping anyone do that. Something is changing, I said. Sloane looked at me. Marin did not blink. I continued, careful but clear. Nothing has happened that affects the work, but pretending there's no trust or tension here would be dishonest. Sloane's eyes softened in a way I almost couldn't look at. Marin folded her hands. Good. Honesty is usually less messy than clever concealment. Then she stood. At 7, Darren will not be running that call. I will. Sloane exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. Marin pointed at both of us. You will go home. Sleep if possible. Show up at 6:45 with the full packet and no theatrics. She looked at me. Do not resign. Then at Sloan. Do not martyr yourself. Then back at both of us. And whatever this is, keep it out of the line of fire until you've both made decisions in daylight. That was the most useful romantic advice I had ever received from a retired founding partner in pajamas. Sloan drove me back to the office garage in silence. Not uncomfortable silence. Loaded silence. When we stopped beside my truck, neither of us moved immediately. You said something is changing, she said. I did. That was risky. So was sitting at my desk with my resignation draft. Her mouth curved faintly. Fair. Rain tapped against the roof. The parking garage smelled like wet concrete and exhaust, which should not have felt intimate and somehow did. Sloan turned toward me. Marin was right. About sleeping? No one sleeps before a 7 a.m. partner ambush. Then what? Daylight. I nodded. Yeah. She looked at me for a long second, and all the sharpness was still there, but now I could see the fear underneath it. Not weakness. Fear of wanting something badly enough that it could cost her. I don't want this to start because we're angry, she said. It didn't. Her breath caught slightly. I didn't move closer, neither did she. That restraint felt like a choice both of us were making with clenched hands. At 6:45, we walked into conference room 4 together. Darren was already there. So were 3 partners. Marin sat at the head of the table with a cup of tea, looking like she had been born disappointed in men who sent careless emails. Darren's face changed when he saw her. That was satisfying. Marin opened the meeting with one sentence. Before we discuss Northbridge leadership, we will correct the record. For the next 40 minutes, the room got very quiet. Sloan presented the access logs. I walked through the revision history. Marin read Darren's memo aloud, including the line about positioning Sloan as sole architect after my voluntary exit. Nobody interrupted, not even Darren. Especially not Darren. By 8:02, the decision was made. Northbridge would be formally co-led. My authorship would be restored in the client record. Sloan would remain strategic lead on brand architecture. I would lead implementation and community access. Darren would be removed from account oversight pending internal review. It was not dramatic, no shouting, no confession, just paper doing what paper does best when people stop letting it be hidden. After the meeting, Darren walked out without looking at either of us. Sloan stayed behind, staring at the empty chair where he had been. I stood beside her. You okay? I asked. No. Good answer. She laughed softly. Then she looked at me. We won. We corrected the record. That is your least romantic way of saying we won. I looked at her, and the tiredness, the relief, the last 24 hours of anger, and almost all caught up at once. Sloan. Her smile faded. I didn't step closer, not yet. But I said the thing anyway. When the daylight comes, I still want to talk. Her eyes held mine. Then she said, Good. Because I didn't sit at your desk because of Northbridge alone. And just like that, the room became more dangerous than the archive room had ever been. I looked at Sloan across the conference room table with the corrected Northbridge record still open between us, and the first honest morning of my career sitting in the air. You didn't sit at my desk because of Northbridge alone, I repeated. No. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. That mattered more. Sloan Archer could walk into a partner meeting with evidence, dismantle a managing partner's narrative, and make a room full of executives feel underprepared for their own opinions. But standing there with me after the fight was over, she looked almost afraid. Not of me, of the part that came next. I closed the laptop slowly. Then why? She looked toward the glass wall where the office had started moving again. People at desks, coffee cups, emails, normal morning noise pretending nothing important had shifted underneath the floor. Because when I saw your resignation draft, she said, I got angry before I got strategic. That sounds unlike you. It was deeply inconvenient. I almost smiled. She did not. I thought I was angry because Darren was using you, she continued. And I was. But then I realized I was angrier because you were going to leave without telling me. That landed quietly. Hard. I didn't think I owed you that. No. Her eyes came back to mine. You didn't. That was the problem. I wanted to matter enough that you would. The room went still. There are sentences that don't raise their voice because they don't need to. That was one. I stood there with no clever answer, no argument, no clean professional phrasing to hide inside. Sloane gave a small, embarrassed laugh. That sounded less pathetic in my head. It didn't sound pathetic. It sounded exposed. Those aren't the same thing. She looked at me then, and something softened in her face. Maybe because I had finally stopped treating restraint like distance. The door opened before either of us moved. Marin stood there with her tea. Of course. Her timing was ruthless enough to qualify as architecture. Good, she said. You're both still here. Sloane straightened. Marin. I need 2 signatures on the revised account structure before legal archives hit. She set a folder on the table, then looked at both of us over her glasses. And I need both of you to remember that clarity is not just for client records. Neither of us answered. Marin's mouth barely moved. That was her version of a smile. Carry on, she said, and left. Sloane stared at the closed door. She knows everything. She probably knew before we did. That's unsettling. That's Marin. We signed the revised structure. Not romantically, not symbolically, just 2 signatures on paper. But when Sloane handed me the pen, our fingers brushed again, and this time neither of us pretended not to notice. For 3 weeks we kept it clean. Professionally clean. No late-night archive rooms, no closed-door conversations without purpose. No turning the thrill of being believed into a shortcut for something neither of us wanted to damage. Northbridge became ours in the official record and in the work itself. Sloane led the brand strategy with a precision that made the client both nervous and devoted. I handled implementation, community access, and the ugly logistical details that make beautiful plans survive contact with real neighborhoods. We argued constantly. Better than before, cleaner than before, no performance, no hidden resentment, no trying to win the room by making the other person smaller. And every argument had a dangerous little truth under it. We trusted each other. Darren did not survive the internal review, not immediately. Firms like ours rarely act fast when the problem wears expensive shoes. But the pattern came out. Other misattributed work, other internal planning memos, other people quieter than me who had swallowed being erased because they did not have a Sloane Archer sitting at their desk after hours with proof in her hand. He resigned 6 weeks later. The announcement called it a transition. Marin called it trash removal in private. I loved that woman. Sloane and I had our first real date 2 nights after Darren left. Not dinner at some polished place where we could pretend to be people with uncomplicated timing. We got takeout and ate it on a bench near the river because neither of us trusted ourselves in a dim restaurant yet. She wore a black coat and no office armor. I brought napkins. She looked at them and said, "You are aggressively prepared. You brought 3 pens. Pens are different. How? They matter." I laughed. She tried not to, failed. That was when I kissed her. Not because the night was perfect, because it wasn't. It was cold, the noodles were mediocre, and a cyclist yelled at us for blocking half the path. But Sloane was laughing, really laughing, and for once, I did not feel like the steady part of me was something to overcome. I felt like it was the place she had been trying to reach. When we pulled apart, she looked almost offended by how gently I had done it. "That was very restrained," she said. "I'm capable of growth. I'm undecided. Take your time." She did. We both did. A year later, Northbridge broke ground with our names on the public planning record. Mine and Sloane's, side by side. No hidden authorship, no footnotes, no polite erasure. At the ceremony, Marin stood behind us and muttered, "Try not to look too pleased with yourselves." Sloane whispered back, "Impossible." Marin said, "Good." 2 years later, Sloane and I left the firm. Not in anger, not in scandal, in clarity. We started a smaller practice with two rules: no stolen credit and no calling exploitation opportunity. Our first office was above a bakery, which meant every client meeting smelled like butter and ambition. Sloan said it made us seem unserious. I said it made us memorable. She corrected our positioning statement 12 times. I proposed on revision 13. She stared at the ring, then at the document, then at me. You put this after the line about ethical development strategy? It felt on theme. You are impossible. Efficient. Her eyes filled. Then she said, yes, but the paragraph still needs work. That was my wife. Years later, when people asked how we got together, Sloan usually said, I found his resignation draft. I'd say she was sitting at my desk like a threat. Both were true. But the real truth was this. I didn't fall in love with Sloan because she saved my career. I fell in love because she saw the part of me the room kept using and refused to let it disappear. And she didn't love me because I beat her. She loved me because I finally stood beside her, not behind her, not against her, but beside her, where the strongest work and the strongest love had been waiting the whole time. What would you have done if you found your work rival sitting at your desk after hours, holding the resignation letter you never meant anyone to see? And have you ever had someone you thought was your competition become the only person willing to protect your name? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.